Oh,
Is that a
there
good
he
thumbnail?
is. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. We are live on the internet, and you are maybe hearing this on the podcast feed, talking to Aaron, OK Pants Sechrist. What's up, Pants?
Craig, how you do? How do you do?
I do well. I do
Thank you for
well,
having me.
especially that's no problem. Um, especially with the topic at hand. We have some good sports news. Stipe Miocic defended his title, won the rubber match, basically, guaranteed that he's the GOAT, as the kids say. Where did you watch the fight? How fight night go for you?
In my living room, I had a couple friends over, literally two friends because plague, and just watched it. Weird night of fights otherwise, but great main event, great fight. I don't know. I felt bad for DC in a way, but great performance on his behalf. I think if anybody else is fighting Stipe and it's not his final fight of his career, that fight ends at the end of the second round. But really, really, really impressive fight. Really nervous fight. Um, just a very, very nice clearing of the clouds in this absolute shitty year.
It's funny because I don't know. It's impossible to say whether it was a good fight or not for me, because the way I watched Stipe fight, I'm so invested, and I'm like ducking, I'm dodging
Yep.
punches, and I'm trying, I'm telling him, get out of there, get out. What are you doing? Don't he just has a tendency to use his chin and stay kind of in that pocket. And but then he did a really good job once he thought he was up after was it the end of the second round where if it had gone another 15 seconds, it would have basically ended the fight.
Yeah, it was the end of the second. DC was saved by the bell, essentially.
And so after that, I thought Stipe just fought really, really smart, like almost like the Ngannou fight where he played defense. He just enough offense so that he could play defense and hold him up against the side of the cage.
Well, yeah, he ate a lot of shots from DC, and a lot of those shots he ate from DC were the ones that put him down in that first fight. But he clearly learned from some of that, and I couldn't have called that fight either way leading up to it. I obviously wanted to see Stipe win, but you just don't know. That's what made that trilogy so awesome, is because couldn't call it. So but yeah, like Stipe stuck to the game plan they set up, and he looked great. I mean, he looked super lean. He really wasn't that much lighter, but he just looked way leaner.
He really did. He did. And it was an impossible fight to call. You're right, because the first fight felt a little bit fluky. It's funny when you're watching all the promo material for this third fight, they took away all the stuff about Brock Lesnar jumping in the ring after the first fight and all that fake drama it was really a big deal for like 3 or 4 months after that fight, and it's been lost. It's erased from the history books as far as the UFC is concerned. But then that second fight comes around, and we were at a Buffalo Wild Wings with some friends because they've got a contract for the UFC. And we're looking around, and I was like, he's going to lose this fight. He's lost this fight. And then he comes from behind out of nowhere.
We're talking about the second fight or the last night fight?
The second fight. Okay. The second fight. I mean, and so looking at those first two fights, the first one seeming fluky, and the second one, Stipe coming out of nowhere to like steal it late. It was hard to have any kind of a concept for what the third fight was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, the two fights had such different vibes to them for sure. And even at certain points, maybe this is just the way Stipe fights, it felt a little bit like he starts to, even he doesn't really know what he's doing at certain points. Like he admitted in that second fight, he really kind of didn't know what the fuck he was doing the first couple rounds, and then he finally like locked into gear. But yeah, I don't look. I think, I don't know if Stipe has got another trilogy in him, but if Mr. Jones decides to step up to heavyweight, assuming Stipe gets past Francis, could be looking at another trilogy with him and John Jones. I don't know. Like, it's wildly intriguing.
If the John Jones fight is on the table, they got to bypass Ngannou.
Yeah, no, it sounds like by all rights and reasoning, Ngannou's getting a rematch. And being a Cleveland sports fan, I'm not looking past Ngannou just yet. But, Stipe is what, 38?
Yeah, I think he's 37, yeah.
37. So I don't know. I'd love to see one fight between him and John Jones. I don't want to get too far ahead into trilogies and rubber matches with a 205er. But I don't see any reason why Stipe couldn't just go back to the same game plan against Francis and just wrestle him to death for another 5 rounds.
I kind of thought Stipe was going to announce his retirement after this fight. I just kind of thought, I figured, on a high note, nobody gets to walk away from a UFC career happy, really. I mean, you look at the way that like Chuck Liddell ended, and I just remember that was my first, that was my lesson of the UFC, where Chuck Liddell was my favorite fighter. He seemed unstoppable. He was like decorated. He was a legend. And then he just kept getting knocked out for 3 or 4 fights when he held on too long.
Oh, I mean, he got knocked out. He got knocked silly to the point Dana wouldn't let him fight in UFC anymore. He went to, I believe, some smaller promotions to fight because it's all he had. Like, that's just all he knew. It was real sad. But I don't see Stipe doesn't look like he's taken a step back in any way. Like, he still looks in no sense that he's getting better with every fight. And, Dan Henderson is like an Olympic wrestler guy, but I mean, he fought at a high level into his 40s. So who knows?
Yeah, the only thing I'll say for Stipe is that he really does rely big time on his chin, same as Liddell. And that stuff, for everything we know, is cumulative.
It's not great. I don't think he's nearly as reckless as Chuck. I mean,
no, you're right.
I'm no fight expert, but like Chuck's arms weren't down. Chuck's arms were like out in fucking outer space, and the dude just got knocked in silly routinely. And Stipe really hasn't taken much damage in his career like that. He took that one shot from Francis. He took some shots from DC. But like, you look at the dudes he's finished, he hasn't really, there's not a lot of mileage on him for how old he is.
No, and there are, there's a lot of speculation that maybe DC doesn't knock him out if he's got another 3 to 6 months after the Ngannou fight. I mean, if you look at the timing of those 2 fights, he might not have been completely and totally healed up from the Ngannou fight when he, because that uppercut that DC knocked him out with doesn't normally knock out Stipe.
No, but Stipe also let him in the inside with that too. So it's, I could argue it was a bad decision on Stipe's behalf. I think Stipe was fine after that Ngannou fight months later. And I think for as much as he doesn't kowtow to Dana's whims, you gotta defend the belt. So
yeah, no, that's true. So that was, I just looked it up. So he fought Ngannou in January 2018, and that first fight against Cormier was 7 months later, just 6.5 months later, July of 2018. So
that's not crazy.
It's not crazy.
That Ngannou fight wasn't a war on Stipe's behalf. I'm sure Stipe was a bit winded after that fight, but I think Stipe can enter the conversation as not just the greatest heavyweight. I mean, he is the greatest heavyweight ever. He enters the conversation, I think, is one of the best pound for pound ever. I know that like the heavyweight division is not historically as stacked as the other divisions, but look who that guy has not only beaten but finished. He finished DC. He beat DC twice. Beat DC to retain the title in DC's final fight. Beat Verdum in Brazil. Finished Arlovsky. Like
Overeem.
Finished Overeem, and that was his first title defense, right?
Yeah, that was the one in Cleveland.
Yeah, no, I was at that, and I say it all the time. It's the wildest shit I've ever seen in person at any sporting event. So,
it was the best live sporting event I ever went to, and
I was
my best experience.
I was in the building for the Game 7 watch party for the Cavs, and it was still, You know, I've been to my share of Browns games at the Municipal Stadium and stuff, but that was the craziest shit I ever saw. So
Yeah, it's between Stipe defending the belt and Game 6. Because I was at Game 6. It's between those two.
yeah, I remember I watched Stipe fight NAAFS fights at Jacobs Pavilion and I was like, you know, the guy was a monster, but I'm like, there's no real way to gauge how much of a monster this guy is because, you know, he's fighting local, you know, talent. You know, no offense to NAAFS, it's not UFC level talent. So clearly he acquitted himself nicely since then, is when he got the call up. But pretty cool shit, man. Like it's there's really like in a year that has sucked so badly, it is nice to see a guy do what he does, not be too serious about it, and you know, it's a needed diversion.
So speaking of not taking it too seriously, I was trying to play the post fight press conference.
Mm-hmm.
I unfortunately I couldn't get the audio to work, but I think we need to explain it to people. Stipe was just like clowning around. He was joking with every reporter. He was ragging on them like in a fun way. He was
He was
just
guy at the bar. He was definitely a guy at the bar personality with all of that. And also that was, I don't know why he gets a pass for this, and I'm not trying to roast him. He always sounds like Cajun man that's out of breath when he does interviews. Like not even after fight, he just, yeah, he's talking like you got it, and then he's talking like it's got him, and it's like, and everyone just kind of deciphers it. But like, yeah, no, that he kicked off that presser, and then so like he called on a guy for the next question, and two guys called at once, and he just pointed over at the one guy. He goes, "You got to fight him, and he starts scolding him, and it's like it was cool because I didn't think they were able to do press conferences right now given the circumstances. So it was cool they were doing it in the first place, and it was cooler that there wasn't, you know, Stipe wasn't given canned answers. It wasn't the sterile, predictable nonsense.
No, and it's all part of the persona. It's all part of what works for him and Cleveland and this whole region, I think, because he, even with the belt around his waist, he was the underdog going into the match. You know that Dana and the UFC want him to lose every time he walks in there because they feel like they have a difficult time promoting him. And he's not Conor McGregor. He's never going to be Conor McGregor. And I fully understand why if you're Dana White, you would love to have a more colorful DC is so much easier for them to sell, but I don't care. I love it.
Yeah, forget DC. Like they wanted him to lose to Ngannou. They wanted him to lose to fucking whoever. And it makes no sense to me because I'm like, he is literally the most meat and potatoes American sports personality. The guy's a fucking firefighter by day. You know, it's like it sells itself, and then for whatever reason, there's always just been this weird rift, and so
He was such a good soldier, taking whatever fight they needed him to take and doing whatever they needed him to do. And then they just never, it's like if you work at a company and you're starting out at this level, but they never recognize your promotions or something. It's like they still think of him as that guy that they could just order around instead of like the goddamn champion.
Well, it's just a tough business. That promotion is just so tough because they've built that brand up to be bigger than any one fighter, save for Conor maybe. But yeah, it's just nothing. You got to scrap for everything. That's why I think Masvidal and was trying to rally for a new contract and stuff before they gave him the who'd he fight on no notice? Usman.
Oh, yeah.
He fought Usman on like a week notice. I'm sure they paid him a fucking mint to do it. So, but my point being is you know, the money that gets thrown around is you know, the fighter's got to literally, pun not intended, fight tooth and nail to get more bucks. It's a brutal business on every level as far as from my cursory understanding.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, it's unlike you know, in the NFL, even where you're always one cut away from being out of the league. It's even worse in the UFC because, you know, you sign a certain number of fight contract, but I think then you get some negotiation from fight to fight. And so obviously, you know, a fight against John Jones is going to be the highest profile of Stipe's career if it comes to pass.
Unless
He
Brock
should be.
wants to fight again.
I was just going to say he should be calling out Brock Lesnar. You want to talk about selling pay-per-views?
But that's the thing about Stipe is he just wasn't even taken with after that that DC the DC fight he got in the octagon, and Stipe, for as fun loving as he was, just wasn't into any of it. He literally said he's like, I didn't sign with the WWE. He's like, I signed to fight. He's like, I don't care about like getting called a piece of shit by a pro wrestler, you know. So, but that would be the fight, you know, like you would think. But the problem with Brock, as it is with wrestling, is he just fights and performs when he wants to, and if he wants to not do it, he ain't doing it. So he's got it like that.
Yeah, well, and that's the other interesting thing. Like if Stipe is the champ and he can demand, let's say, $1 million, Brock Lesnar could walk through the door and go, "Yeah, it's going to be 10.
Yeah,
you're going to give me 10 million, or I'm not."
Dick on the table. I mean, he'll you know 10 million, and I want a piece of the pay-per-view or whatever. And he's just such a big name, he would get it. But it's just it's a very weird. It's not very weird business. It's just very hard business for the talent as opposed to the promoters. I mean, what else? As a guy that's worked in the music industry for a long time, what else is new?
Yeah. Well, and we talk about that all the time at Waiting for Next Year too, because we're, you know, some of us have played in mediocre local bands, and we're all giant music fans, and you know, but it's a tough thing because you want to support people and you want to do all the right things, but then like that the comments come out from the dude who runs Spotify, like telling people that no, it's a new business model, you got to change the way you operate. And I kind of like, I get it, I agree with them, but I don't want to hear the truth. You know, just like I think Stipe should make a lot more money.
Yeah, I'm just with that shit. Not to tangent, but it's
Yeah.
and nothing about that surprises me. That's the music industry in a nutshell. It's always been set up to fuck the artist on plays and downloads and all that stuff. Before, go back to CDs. Fucking Metallica made 10 cents per CD sale or something. It just, that's the way it's always been. And I'm not defending it. I'm just kind of like, what else is new? So, but I mean, going back to Stipe, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that dude's finally making something close to what he's worth, you know. And it just still baffles me to this day that the UFC doesn't get behind him super hard in promoting him. Like it. Why? I mean, why? Because he doesn't own a mansion in Las Vegas, or I don't get it.
So that was my favorite thing was there was a photo of him going to like the airport or whatever, and he was, yeah, here it is. He's holding a pulp, a drink, and this is the kind of promotion.
Oh, yeah.
How much money did he make for the paid partnership with Pulp Kent?
I mean, but that's the problem with fighter sponsorships. Just not even for Stipe. Like a friend of mine put it best. He just goes, "You're one knockout away from tanking the product you're sponsoring." So unless you're literally like Jorge Masvidal or Conor McGregor, and so that's what he's forced to do. He's forced to, you know, shill for like pool fencing companies and you know, like, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it kind of adds to his Midwestern charm in a way, but
oh, and make no mistake, I am not making fun of Stipe.
no, I know.
I'm making fun of the game a little bit. Like that let's say it's like $1,000. He's hustling for $1,000. You know,
I would hope he's getting more than one band for the Pulp sponsorship.
But it was Pulp Kent. It was one store.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, no.
It wasn't the. He could like
paid partnership with Pulp Kent.
Dude, I feel like I'm a few hundred followers away from being able to land a Pulp Kent deal, you know, and I'm nowhere. Like, I thought it was like the whole company Pulp got behind him and they wanted him to like shill for Pulp, which is okay.
No, he's got he's got the Modelo.
It's got wild money. I don't know. I don't go out there much.
He's got the Modelo deal.
Yeah.
That's obviously big stuff. It's just anyway, it just makes me laugh. The game makes me laugh, and the fact that these guys used to be billboards on their way to the ring, and then Dana signed some deal with Reebok and took all that away.
And not only took that away, replaced it with the most horrendously badly designed fucking entrance gear. Like, they designed that shit because they wanted people to buy it, you know. And no offense to whoever designed it, but it's like, I'm not buying, you know, I'm not buying that stuff. I guess their contract's up soon or they're redesigning all that stuff. But at any rate, that was one of the cooler things about MMA to me. I know like people clown Affliction and they clown like MMA culture, but like there was at least a diversity in how like shit looked, and it was like there was sort of a democratization about it. And then when they took that away, it just looked so sterile and silly.
Did you ever see Reebok UFC gear not on your TV? I've never seen it in the wild.
No, when they rolled all that stuff out, half the fighters' names were misspelled on the mock-ups and stuff.
Oh.
Like they did their big like unveiling and stuff, and I think it was like Benson Henderson's name was misspelled, and just like
How do you mess up Benson Henderson?
I'm getting the fighter's name wrong.
No, I know.
Like Gilbert, I think it was Gilbert Melendez was spelled like Menendez or something like that. But like, just like I don't. You know, we know the kind of money that gets thrown around in outfitting in sports and merchandising, and it's just. I don't know. It's like the dudes up top got a check from Reebok and they're like, do whatever you want. You know, we can gas up our yacht for the month with this money and fuck it. Like, it just was a real bummer because it was like those fighters were getting paid pretty decently from like Dethrone and Affliction and Bad Boy. Bad Boy makes some sick merch too, by the way. So,
yeah, well, and it's all been kind of locked in time. It wasn't given a chance to develop because the rug was pulled out from under them.
No, I don't get it because those brands were still ponying up like hundreds of thousands of dollars for the rights to produce gear for those shows to Dana and stuff. So
right, but my point was like, who knows what Affliction would look like today if they'd gotten that contract and they or not gotten that, if the contract hadn't existed and they'd been able to continue on their path, you know, with UFC fighters. Like it just,
you can only
I don't know.
Dazzle shirts so much, man. It was like the design evolution of it all was like the continuation of Ed Hardy, and it just got douchier and more bedazzled and more like metallic effects to the point where they just had to go very minimal and everything got like reined in and stuff. And I don't. I mean, I'm either way. I don't own any Bad Boy or Affliction gear, but it's just interesting to see.
So you think Ngannou's next? You think that's going to happen? Doesn't that fight scare the crap out of you?
I mean, yeah, because the dude can knock anyone out on earth. Like the dude could probably knock the Incredible Hulk out with one punch. So yeah, that's scary, but he's not going to ever be able to catch up to the level of wrestling ability that Stipe's got, you know, not even if they announce that fight a year from now. It's just, I don't see it. And I think the only thing that would scare me is that Ngannou had zero gas for that fight with Stipe. Like he gassed out super hard, super early. So maybe, you know, he jumps on the treadmill and he gets his wind up and his conditioning better for this rematch. But beyond that, if Stipe shows up 5 pounds heavier and just goes back to shooting on him and not laying and praying, I don't want to say that. That's I think it's kind of diminishes what he does, but he wrestles for fucking 5 rounds. Sure. I mean, and also, you know, Stipe could catch Ngannou. We haven't seen Ngannou really get caught yet, have we? I mean, he's not.
I don't think so.
I mean, I'm sure the dude's got a chin if he hasn't been tested, but who knows? So Stipe's no slouch in any aspect of his game.
No, no, you're right. And he has gotten nothing but better. He does not look like he's slowing down.
No, for a 37-year-old dude, especially, no, no.
I mean, he looked a tiny bit slower in the fifth round, but I mean, dude went 5 rounds
The dude was holding an Olympic wrestler up against the cage for 4 rounds before then, like,
and locking his right arm in.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think DC ever really shot on him, but he stuffed at pretty much everything that came at him aside from that first round, and just like super, super impressive stuff. And I guess because it's all developed from our backyard. It's impressive that it's all happened from Strong's. It was all at Strong style, and it all was basically, concocted there. Like super impressive shit. So I mean, DC is top 3 fighter all time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You would have to argue, where does that put Stipe all time if he beat him twice?
Yeah. Unfortunately for DC, and I'm with you, like I do end up kind of feeling sorry for him after the fact. Now that Stipe won 2 out of 3, he's like the second guy in 2 divisions now. He's not John Jones and he's not Stipe.
No, but I think that speaks to his character, where he could have called it a day after he lost to Jones for the second time, and he just kept fighting. Like Ariel Helwani put it best about that fight last night for DC, where he goes, I'm paraphrasing, but he said DC's legacy has long since been cemented as a legend. He's like, he's a top 3 fighter no matter what. What he was after last night was going out like John Elway or Ray Lewis, like, or
Ooh,
Jamal.
Elway's a good one.
Yeah, like, he just get that one last championship win and ride off into the sunset. Like, but that doesn't. The guy still went 5 rounds after literally getting knocked out in the second round. I think we can agree he was not with it at the end of that second round, and they let him go. So nothing to be ashamed of. And he had long since nothing left to prove. Just very, I kind of hate sportsmanship. The wrestling fan in me hates class and sportsmanship to an extent, but there's nothing you just can't be impressed by with how both guys carry themselves. They both got an eye poke in. I hope DC's corny is okay. Sounds like he's going to be all right, but that was a little scary.
It was a nasty looking eye poke.
Well, it was nasty, and then his eye was looking wonky after that second round. At the end of the second round, too, like he took a shot to the eye. So, but I've never understood like folk style freestyle wrestling. Like I've always respected it, but I don't understand it. But when you see a guy grind through all that for 5 rounds, you're like, it's a level of toughness that's like a different universe. I could never like understand.
Oh yeah, not even close. I could never understand that. All right, so let's close the loop on a couple things that you and I talk about all the time.
Sure.
It's been a little bit since we talked. I don't think had the Browns' new uniforms been out.
I don't think we discussed these. No.
So, what were your perceptions once the Browns basically just went back to what they used to have?
I mean, this is all it can ever be. I mean, we tried doing some wacky shit in 2015, and we saw both aesthetically and performance-wise what happened there. So they had no choice but to go back to this. You can't. This is what it should be. My opinions on the Browns branding and whether or not it should be the Browns is pretty established, but I mean, it looks fine. And given what we've had to look at for the last 5 years, it looks better. It's what it should be.
And they didn't do a crazy unveiling ceremony, thank God.
No, I mean, Nike's churning out so much of that stuff now that I don't even think it's almost not worth their money to do like a big pomp and circumstance fashion show like they did in 2015. It's sort of like they roll the shit out, they put the JPEGs in a quick video on Twitter, and they let people tear it to shreds for
put a couple fire emojis next to it.
It's literally, I mean, they pour millions of dollars into these things, but it's literally no more complex than that. But yeah, it's fine. They looks cool. I mean, if they go 13-3 this year, they'll look great. It's kind of the bottom line of all this shit. I think the bottom line is I just hope they get a full season off. and I hope that we can win more than 6 games this season. But everything is so cosmically fucked. You know, if we can't pull off a fucking football season this year, we're gonna see World War III. I mean, it's just I don't know why I went off on that rambling, but yeah, the uniforms look fine. The Rams uniforms look insane. The Falcons uniforms, I think, honestly, look pretty great. I don't care what teenagers on Twitter have to say about it. This all feels also like this shit was rolled out 7 years ago because of the quarantine, but this all was like a few months ago, right?
So yeah, I was gonna bring up these Rams uniforms.
Those would be the ones. The iconic, the number one uniform that did not need any tweaking or updating. And whew.
What? So other than the fact that it kind of looks like Michigan, like what do you hate the most?
Well, this particular mock-up doesn't reflect like a lot of the idiosyncrasies that are just nonsensical. But so basically, it looks like in this mock-up that you have the royal blue and gold uniforms, and you have like white and royal blue numbered uniforms, but the white uniforms are actually this proprietary color that's off-white that's called designated bone. So let's start there. These uniforms never needed to be updated past the 80s from the Eric Dickerson era, but they did it. In the 90s ones, they looked fine. They actually looked pretty sharp. Then they updated to these things. They put a patch on the chest that say Los Angeles Rams because apparently you need to remind people they're the Los Angeles Rams, where if you never fucking touched them in the first place, you wouldn't have to put that on the uniform.
Well, look at the patch on the white, the bone uniform.
Right. It's a different tone, and it's like I don't know what the process was there, but it's just like a lot of they're like, we've got this new gelatin printing method we want to try out. And they're like, cool, let's try it on this numbers. Like fucking so the things that work about it to me is the new metal detailing of like the horns on the helmet don't look as cool as the old ones to me, but it still looks pretty all right to me. It looks fine. The piping on the numbers themselves is kind of cool, but none of this needed to happen for the other.
Oh, I just realized that the numbers fade from yellow into white.
Yeah, there's a gradient on the royal blue uniforms.
Thank you. A gradient. Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
An ombre, if you will, for you hair enthusiasts. But it's just like they could have done that with like one of the expansion teams or the newer teams, or they could have even just done it with the Browns and just said, we're going to make these even wackier. Fuck you. But
there's a gradient from brown to orange or orange to white.
So they interviewed Eric Dickerson, who works like as GM or VP of player, football business for the Rams. And he tore the things to absolute shreds to such an extent. I was like, man, no one ran any of this by this guy because he is infuriated. So they asked him, he's like, I think they suck. He goes, I think the horns look like bananas on the helmet. He goes, I think they never should have changed it from the 80s. And he's like, the company that pays him just like shat all like fucking diarrhea shat all over it. It was the funniest thing I've ever read in my life. So it's worth looking up if you're that bored because it's a funny read, but it's also
the Los Angeles Fighting Bananas.
Yeah, it was. He closed his review with he just goes, "They suck." Just a designer, I don't even lay the failure of that uniform on the designers. I'm sure this is like a process a product as it always is. Of there being too many stakeholders in on the project.
There were committees.
At any rate, I don't know. I'm sure Nike ain't hiring me for anything at this point after fucking, but whatever.
But I
say we're gonna make it 2021 anyways. Fuck it.
Might as well burn that bridge. Just burn it. All right. So last but not least, you did a mock-up of the Buzzards. We've talked about baseball uniforms and pretty much since I last talked to you, we found out that the Indians are probably almost definitely not going to be the Indians anymore.
Yeah, I sure had great timing on that one, huh? So like literally July of 2019, I took like a couple weeks and I put like a speculative rebrand of the Indians together. And I decided I was going to publicly pitch the notion that the Indians should rebrand as the Cleveland Buzzards and replace Chief Wahoo with the 100.7 WMMS Buzzard radio logo, which anybody in a 100-mile radius of Cleveland knows what that is. So, all right, bring it up here. So I put like a deck together and I kind of just put like some supplementary graphics around this main Buzzard logo because the original artist of the Buzzard, Thai food. The original Buzzard logo designer, illustrator David Helton, I sought him out, emailed him. He gave me his blessing to use the logo in this pitch, which, I made real clear. I'm like, I'm just doing this for fun. I just want to kind of put it out in the ether, see what comes back. So this is like a year ago, and it got like pretty good reception up front. And then a year later, I'm sitting like in a hot tub in the middle of the Smoky Mountains, recharging my brain during quarantine. Like I took 3 days off to drive out to the mountains just to because I'd been working so much. I just needed I needed a mental health week. So of course, because it's a mental health week and I'm trying to disengage, my phone is literally next to me in the hot tub and I start getting DMs and stuff like, hey man, your Buzzard stuff's making the rounds on Twitter and Facebook. I go, oh,
It's partially my fault.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. By the way, yeah, to your credit, it wasn't a fault thing at all. So I'm like, when people text me stuff, I'm like, what does that really fucking mean? So then I go to Facebook and I found like the post that was getting shared around with some of my stuff, like 2,500 shares, like in a day, and I was like, oh, that's moving the needle. So then I was like, I hit up Twitter, put out, some posts, and then it kind of like took fire, and I was like, I don't think like I'm going to be getting a call from the Dolans about rebranding this team. But like, if you really look at the conversation that's going on here, it picked up tons of heat. Like it was a lot of conversation about the Spiders, and then the Buzzards was either like a 1B to the 1A, or it was picked up more heat than even the Spiders. So I put a lot of documentation and thought and notes into why I thought it should be the Buzzards. And I thought I explained myself nicely about it, and then I think it converted a lot of people that were just dead set on keeping Chief Wahoo until the earth fucking caved in. So I find it hard to believe that that people of the Indians haven't at least had their eyes on it, or at least discussed it internally. I've not been told anything from anyone officially, but who knows where it goes. I mean, they were so vague about it. They might make this change next season. They might make this change in the year 2030. Who really knows? It took them like a decade to completely get rid of Wahoo for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, and only once there was like something dangling the All-Star game did they make a move on it. They basically, I've always criticized them, for leading from behind and not being out front and just like kind of letting the world happen to them. And as fans, we've gotten drug along with all this. And I know some of the fans and some of the takes are kind of despicable or that they're not, it's not good. It's kind of embarrassing. But even those takes, I kind of blame on the Dolans for keeping this in top of conversation as long as it has been, because they had the power to do something about this and make it happen faster, and they haven't.
Well, it was for the same reason that it took forever for Dan Snyder to finally change the Washington football team to literally the Washington football team, where it's a case of they're listening to who stands for their bottom dollar, and they're going to wring every cent out of it that they can until it benefits them from a marketing and sales standpoint to make the move. So, I'm not picking that apart. I think change is good. I think it's definitely time. And I'm saying that, yes, as someone that might stand to benefit from said change, but I'm also saying it objectively. It's like, if you're going to have to make the move at some point. The Cleveland Indians weren't always called the Cleveland Indians, and people adjusted over time. That's how brand design works. That's how branding works. You make a move, you move forward confidently with it, and over time you build equity and a sense of history into it, and people accept it.
And yeah, maybe your kids won't have the same relationship to Major League that you did, but it's okay.
In a
It's
time we might not be sending kids to school, is it really that big of a fucking deal if we get rid of your stupid fucking logo on your baseball team that's only playing 60 games this year? Grow the fuck up.
I've got a title for this podcast. This could be "Okay Pants has had it."
I'm
not making fun. I'm just joking.
I am at the end of my fucking rope, as I'm sure a lot of people are, and I don't have any kids to fucking look after. I ain't got no fucking girlfriend or wife I need to worry about. But man, I'm sure I'm as fed up and Michael Douglas and falling down as anybody is fed about all this shit, man. And it's just been a bad day for me. And tomorrow's a new day, but man, it's rough. It's rough.
Well, one happy your point about, you know, having the kids and trying to find the shining light in the darkness or whatever. I did show my kids Dumb and Dumber today for the first time. So we're trying to.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be sad guy. When this all started,
No, I know.
Man, I'm kind of thankful I have nobody I've got to fucking entertain 24 hours a day. And then 5 months later, I go, man, you know, it'd be kind of nice if I fucking, you know, could just show someone Police Academy 1 for the first time or something, you know, like I'm at that point where it's like kind of the worm turn. Like the first few months we're like fucking, okay, cool. Like this will be over by April, right? And then I was like, do I need to buy another round of canned soup for the winter? Like, I don't fucking like, who knows, man?
Oh,
it's funny, man. Everything's funny. What are you gonna do? Like, what there? I can't control any of this.
No, and that's really where it comes down for all of us is nobody has any control over anything, and I'm a control freak in pretty much every phase of my life. I try and control variables. I used to when I knew that we were gonna, like, if I was gonna go run a new race, you know, whether it was like a 5K or whatever, I would drive to the starting line on like the Friday before, just so that I had like the lay of the land ahead of time. Yeah. I'm that level of control freak, and I've had to learn to just kind of figure it out as we go along.
See, I'm the opposite way. I'm the guy that can ride the wave. I'm the guy that can, you know, I'm pretty good at accepting. I'm pretty good at engaging with what I can control and just accepting what I can't. But man, the more this wears on and the more it becomes apparent that no one's in control of anything, or really, like, I don't know. I'm just like, I find as the days go by, I'm muting a whole lot more people. I'm filtering a whole lot more content, and just, you know, trying to laugh every day.
Yeah, man. Well, I hope we got at least a couple.
I might have to buy a crossbow at some point. Sorry, what were you saying?
I hope I was just saying, I hope that this gave you at least a couple of smiles, a couple of laughs, and it was good to catch up, man.
This gave me something to look forward to. The Stipe fight was you know, it was awesome to see. You know, it kind of jacked the serotonin up a little bit as needed. So we'll get through it, man. It is what it is.
Yeah,
better days ahead.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks so much for watching, listening, however you guys check this out. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you next time.
I'm sorry for clacking these coins against the desk all the time. I'm sure that was getting caught, but thank you for having me.
All right. We'll talk to you next time. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.